And now we will focus on one of the maybe most debated topics in data protection. Of course, the international data transfer debate has been going on for many, many years now. And I'm very glad to have Alex Greenstein here with me again. He's the director of the Data Privacy Framework at the US Department of Commerce. And yeah, Alex, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. I know how crazy busy your schedule is, and it's absolutely fantastic that you're, nevertheless, talking us through the new DPF and what the changes are and so on. I'll give the stage to you for the first couple of minutes, and then I guess we'll have a lot of questions, and we'll just talk about what the DPF means in practice. But maybe you can give us a brief overview what the DPF really is, what the main differences to the Privacy Shield are.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and it's good to be back here at Bitcom. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to come in person this year, and I hope to sort of make it again in person in the future. I know it's been a good participating in these conferences, and also it's nice to finally have some good news. I mean, that sort of after sort of an extended period of uncertainty, we and our partners in the Commission were finally able to bring the data privacy framework into force this summer, and that definitely sort of, I think, prevented my team and sort of the European Commission team from having sort of a normal summer break, as it were. But I think it was definitely very satisfactory to sort of have it done. So the data privacy framework, which is sort of the latest iteration of sort of the bridging mechanism between sort of the European approach to data protection and sort of US law, which has existed for over 20 years, going back to sort of the Safe Harbor framework, then the Privacy Shield, and now the Data Privacy Framework. And we brought that into force, came into effect in July of this year. And this really marked the culmination of sort of a great deal of work going back to back in sort of March of 2022, when sort of President Biden and President van der Leyen agreed in principle on sort of the data privacy framework. After that, we and colleagues had to do a great deal of work to sort of implement those commitments. And that resulted in Executive Order 14086, which was made significant commitments about US government access to data and redress. And the reason we were doing all of this was the European Court of Justice's decision in the Schrems 2 case, which struck down Privacy Shield, the previous data transfer framework. And so after these extensive national security discussions and the sort of major significant new commitments that we can sort of go into, I think we discussed a lot in the past, we were really happy this summer to be able to bring the framework into force, enabling companies to transfer data from Europe to the United States with assurance. And this is really just vital to sort of the transatlantic economy, and companies of all sort of sizes and types and sectors use this mechanism, particularly small and medium enterprises, for data transfers. And so now that the framework has been brought into force, my team has been doing a great deal of work of operationalizing it, doing outreach to industry, helping companies sign up for it again. And yes, we are continuing to sort of have discussions with sort of our partners at the European Commission, as well as sort of European DPAs, about how companies can use the data privacy framework, and then also about sort of transatlantic data transfers in the context of following the Schrems 2 decision, but also following upon the data privacy framework. But we are really happy that this has been able to restore stability to transatlantic data flows, and we are prepared to sort of work to operationalize this and work with our European partners to defend it from future legal challenges. But I think I've gone on for too long right now, and it'll be better for questions and answers.
You absolutely haven't, but I think operationalization is a good keyword, because how is the signing up process going? Do you feel that the new DPF has been accepted by both markets, so the US and the EU side, of course? How's that going so far?
I think it's been going pretty well. I mean, certainly we did have sort of some attrition of sort of like, companies who are participating in Privacy Shield during that 2-year period when it was invalidated. At its peak, Privacy Shield was 5,400 companies. Right now, with the DPF, we have 2,500 companies. So it's definitely, I mean, significantly reduced. I mean, I think a lot of companies did sort of move over to the standard contractual clauses during that time period. But we've also seen sort of a really significant increase in certification numbers since the entry into force. I think right now, the most recent figure I saw was our caseload was up 84% since entry into force. And so we're definitely seeing a lot of interest from companies because the SEC certainly were still an option during that time period, but they are significantly more expensive and burdensome for companies. And I think that's really one of the things that made finding a replacement for the Privacy Shield so important. Certainly we wanted to do it to restore stability to all data transfers, because the commitments that we made on national security apply also to the standard contractual clauses and binding corporate rules. But also, Privacy Shield and now the DPF is really an affordable and more easily implemented way of complying with the GDPR's transfer requirements. And I think that is a significant interest to small companies, because they really don't have the money or the sort of legal resources to apply the SCCs to all of their transfers. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of companies coming back to the DPF. And also, I mean, the thing is that for companies who are already in Privacy Shield, the data privacy framework is not difficult to implement, because when we negotiated this with the European Commission, our goal was to make sure that companies could have a seamless transition. And so there aren't a whole lot of significant changes. Certainly, they'll have to change some references in their privacy policies. And there are some small changes here and there to update it to reflect the General Data Protection Regulation. But by and large, sort of the company's obligations under the DPF will be quite similar to their obligations under Privacy Shield. One significant change that we did make was actually that could be quite helpful to companies, particularly in the health sector, is the DPF now covers key-coded data, which was not covered under Privacy Shield, which could help with sort of companies in the life sciences sector who are dealing with clinical trials.
That's a very interesting aspect. I think it hasn't been highlighted that often before. Let us circle back a bit, because you said, okay, the certification is kind of going well, but of course we are not yet where we used to be under the Privacy Shield. I think you're absolutely right in saying a lot of companies, of course, switch to the SECs to legally secure their transfers, and are not spontaneously switching back to the DPF now. But I also got the feeling that the market is still kind of reacting to the legal uncertainty, because we know that there are already legal challenges going on. How do you deal with that process, on top of everything else? Do you think there will be other legal challenges to the DPF? Do you think it will land before the CJ here yet again, and how will that go?
Well, I think certainly there will continue to be legal challenges to this framework. And that's something that sort of we and our partners in the Commission were focused on from sort of the very beginning of these negotiations. And we sort of set as our goal to negotiate sort of a framework that directly addressed the concerns raised in the Schrems II case, And so for that reason, I mean, we are confident that the DPF can withstand legal challenge, and we're prepared to defend it. I think that sort of certainly that has to be in companies' minds. But on the other hand, sort of I think that companies also need to have a transfer mechanism. And certainly there is always sort of a possibility of legal challenge. But I think the fact that sort of the United States government and sort of the European Commission have put their weight behind this, I think should be reassuring to companies. And then also, I think substantively, the commitments that we made in the DPF, when you sort of look at what the court said in Schrems 2 and what we have done, I mean, we did sort of address the concerns and sort of all the issues that were sort of laid out in the decision. So I think that does give us it makes me more positive for our prospects against future legal challenges. I'll also say that sort of the other thing in terms of industry uptake of the DPF is that we are doing a good deal of outreach to industry. We've been doing road shows around the United States, and we definitely want to talk more to sort of European industry who also using European companies were also using Privacy Shield for their data transfers because as we all know, sort of many German companies have operations in the United States and need to be able to transfer data and human resources data and whatnot, customer data. And so we're doing a lot of outreach to companies, sort of highlighting that the data privacy framework is sort of back in effect and that this is a viable transfer mechanism for the future. And then also, I mean, I think the issue is that there needs to be some sort of mechanism here because ultimately one of the reasons that we did sort of the data privacy framework was also that there was a recognition that the SCCs were not safe either. I mean, in the face of Schrems 2, and that sort of they were under legal peril as well. And so we needed to make these national security commitments and have this adequacy decision to say that sort of the U.S. Processes were met the European legal standards.
Yeah,
so that's why we're going to defend it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is also reassuring to hear that you are more optimistic and confident that the DPF will, of course, see legal challenges, but will not be struck down, hopefully. Is the DPF as it is now, is that the end of it, or is there more to come? Are there other regions that will be covered or included into the transfer mechanism, or the other frameworks that you're developing now with other regions?
Yeah, I mean, we're working right now to sort of on bringing into force the UK extension to the EU data privacy framework, and so that will cover data transfers from the United Kingdom to the United States. That was something that we'd sort of been working on for some time, even going back to sort of Brexit, which sort of builds on the sort of commonalities between sort of the UK data privacy framework and sort of the EU. And that should be entering into force, actually, I believe today. And then we're also working on the Swiss US data privacy framework, which sort of builds on, again, sort of the Swiss US Privacy Shield. Those are sort of the main sort of regional expansions that we're looking at. I don't think that sort of we're looking at sort of doing DPF type agreements beyond sort of Europe right now, because it is certainly particularized to sort of the GDPR in this context. We are sort of looking at other expansion opportunities. This includes, I mean, we've had a great deal of interest in the past from a couple of other sectors, particularly nonprofits aren't covered right now under the DPF, and so we're exploring options for that. Another sector we've had a great deal of interest in is healthcare and life sciences and sort of biomedical, which are actually covered sort of can be used under the DPF right now, but we're looking at sort of how we can better publicize that and sort of engage with that sector. We've also received interest from financial services, and so we're looking into sort of how we could better serve customers in that sector. I mean, that is a little bit sort of trickier regulatory wise, but we're sort of exploring that because there is some demand there.
Doesn't feel like you have a lot of free time on your hands right now, Alex. I thought that, like when the DPF went out there and really entered into force, that you got some kind of a breather, but it doesn't. Yeah, doesn't feel that
sort of
way.
Transitioning
right?
from sort of like these very intensive negotiations where we were very much focused on the national security issues at hand, but now we're sort of pivoting a little bit into sort of the actually running the framework and focusing on the commercial issues, which is sort of one of those things where it's interesting because the Schrems 2 case was focused solely on national security and really didn't say anything about sort of like the commercial issues. And it's nice to be able to sort of return to those kind of, I guess, more basic sort of data protection issues where it really is focused on protecting individuals' data and ensuring that companies abide by their commitments. And that's sort of what my team does, and not sort of as being as focused on the national security issues.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Maybe we're running out of time again, but one last question I really want to ask. What advice can you give all the companies that are using the DPF right now? What steps need to be taken? What areas they need to focus on? And maybe even with a view to the extensions that you mentioned, especially regarding the UK and Swiss.
Yeah, I would say that sort of if like companies right now, we are at the end of sort of the 3-month transition period that companies who were in Privacy Shield had to sign up for the data privacy framework. And so we're seeing a significant increase in caseload, but we're also seeing a lot of companies who are participating in Privacy Shield signing up again for the DPF and creating 2 accounts, which is causes some problems for my team sort of on the administering the program. So I would say that like if a company is already participating in Privacy Shield, they can actually log into the Data Privacy Framework website using the rolled login credentials. And so that's one thing. I would say also just that if companies sort of have been using sort of the SCCs in sort of this interim time period, yeah, I would invite them to sort of take a look at the Data Privacy Framework because it ends up being sort of a significantly more affordable and requires sort of less tailoring and sort of is less labor intensive than sort of applying the SCCs to their operations. Yeah, I guess that's sort of like the words of advice I would have for companies. And also, like previously I'd said that sort of we were switching our focus to sort of the commercial issues, but that doesn't mean that we aren't sort of focused on the national security issues and the sort of very serious commitments that we made on government access to data in order to address the concerns raised by Schrems 2. And I can say that definitely we are in the process of the U.S. intelligence community has fully implemented their commitments on necessity and proportionality and how they do surveillance. And then also our Department of Justice has really made a great deal of progress in standing up the Data Privacy Review Court, this new redress mechanism that really is quite unprecedented and establishes a real court that can hear complaints from EU individuals. And then also we are working with sort of the European Data Protection Board and member state DPAs in order to receive complaints from EU individuals who think that their data has been inappropriately accessed for government access by government.
I bet, Alex, it has been quite a journey. I think all of our participants today will join me in thanking you, not only for being here today, but for going the extra mile and for making all the effort and for making it possible to get a new framework and a new transfer mechanism in place, because we're here on the European side, on the continent. Yeah, we've really been waiting for it.
Because it was a difficult situation for everybody, and we're really glad to have been able to. And thank you all for sort of bearing with us and the European Commission as we tried to resolve the situation.
Yeah, but it was excellent work. So thank you so much. I think we will follow closely what will happen in the future, of course, with the UK and Switzerland extension, but also with the content extension, and of course with all the legal critique and challenges going on. I think this will not be our last talk, Alex. Thank you for today. It was a great pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Cheers.
Bye.